Hi guys, welcome back. We are on chapter 17 of the Barren Grounds by David A. Robertson, page 161. This is video 2 of chapter 17. Okay, halfway down, page 161. There's always something to do, Ochek said. It was an uneventful lunch. The group noticed their exhaustion only when they finally rested. They sat chewing and sipping in silence until Ochek spoke sharply. "Get behind me!" He stood tall, making himself look bigger than he'd ever looked before. Morgan and Eli and Eric all moved behind him quickly. There came a growl, low and terrible. Ochek raised his arms out from his sides protectively, corralling the three others behind him. Another growled, followed by a sharp bark. Morgan shuffled to the side and stretched her neck so that she could see over Ochek's shoulder. Eli grabbed her hand, and she thought her hand had never been held tighter. He was either scared or wanting her not to move. Likely both. But then he edged out to the side as well and looked out from behind Morgan. The wolf was standing on all fours at the end of the grove, between the travelers and the top of the mountain. Oh my. Its entire body was covered in dark gray fur, which seemed only there to frame its yellow eyes, more blinding than the sun reflecting off the snowy terrain. Even more pronounced than the wolf's fur or eyes was its size. Beings across the sky were in varying stages of starvation, their fur matted and thin, failing to hide the fact that they had no meat on their bones. The wolf appeared well fed, a hulk of an animal, healthy, its body thick and strong and horrifying. "It's not from here," Morgan whispered. "Quiet, Esquesis," Ochek whispered, his body unmoving. "She's right," Eli whispered. "Look at it. It's not starving." "It's from where there's summer," Morgan said. Each one of them refused to take their eyes off the wolf. The wolf, likewise, didn't take its eyes off the group. It may as well have been a statue, unmoving until ready to strike. "I heard the summer birds were being held by the man in a cabin just past the mountains," Eric said. "Those aren't exactly GPS coordinates," Morgan said. "All we need to do is get past the wolf and over the mountain," Eric said. "Simple." "Simple?" Morgan said. "How are we ever going to make it past that thing?" "If that's true," Ochek said, "it means the wolf isn't here to eat us now. It wasn't going to eat me years ago." "Isn't that what wolves stalk people for?" Morgan asked. "To eat them?" "It's here to keep us away from the green time," Ochek said. "I didn't know it back then, or I might have tried to fight it. I know it now." At that moment, the wolf rose from its four paws to stand on its hind legs. It straightened out its back with an awful crack, extended its claws and puffed out its chest. Now standing with a decidedly evil smirk, it looked bigger than it had before. Its shadow fell over them as if the sky itself had been covered. Ochek reached down, picked up the hatchet he'd used to cut the wood, and clutched it firmly. "You're right, Ochek." When the wolf spoke, it sounded like he was growling. He had a deep and gravelly voice. "I'm not here to eat you, but I will. Go back to Mizwa. You were smart enough to do that before." "Go back? And what? Die?" Ochek asked. "Die with your village," the wolf said. "It's only right. You've suffered together." "I'd rather die fighting than die hungry." Ochek pulled out his knife to wield a weapon in either paw. Anticipating a battle, Eric took one of the hut poles out and wielded it like a bow staff. Morgan grabbed the end of a piece of wood in the fire and picked it up. A torch was better than nothing. Eli just kept backing away, his heels sliding through the snow, his hands shaking, his eyes wide with fear. The wolf took one step forward. "You're with the man," Ochek said. "Why?" "Better there than here, wouldn't you say?" the wolf asked. "You're a traitor," Ochek said. "I stay in the green time," the wolf said, "and in turn, I keep the two-legged out." "That's exactly what Ochek meant when he said you were a traitor," Eric said. "You're just agreeing with him." "This is fun for me. I'm no traitor," the wolf said. "When I'm tired of the man, I'll kill him too." "Come with us," Ochek said. "Release the summer birds so that we can all live the way we were meant to live." "And stay with you in your village?" the wolf asked. "Pathetic." "So that's a no?" Eric said. "I'll take the green time rather than all 4 seasons in their endless cycle." The wolf took another step forward. He was now in the grove. Morgan reached forward with her torch. Eric held her staff out in front of Morgan defensively. Ochek stepped towards the wolf, his weapons at the ready. The wolf growled and bared its teeth. "Now," he said, "I gave you a choice." "There is no choice," Ochek said. "If you think you're as vicious as we are determined, shut up and fight." The wolf looked back and forth across all 4 of them, sizing each of the travelers up, looking at their weapons, meeting their eyes, and paying particular attention to Eli. This made Morgan step in front of Eli and grab onto her torch with both hands, as if she was holding an axe. The wolf's bright yellow eyes narrowed at his eyebrows, furrowed, and he let out a violent growl, long and sharp. Then he backed out of the grove and dropped to all 4s again. "You'll be at the summit by nightfall," he said. "I'll give you that time as a courtesy to think about how awful you want your death to be." Didn't attack them. "We won't change our minds," Ochek said. "Then I'll see you very soon," he said. The wolf strode away from them, slowly and deliberately. When the wolf was gone, they were finally able to relax and lowered their weapons. "You okay?" Morgan asked Eli, who was still shaking. "Yeah," he said, but his trembling lips and voice said otherwise. I'm fine." She dropped the wood back into the fire and took his hand in hers. "We can leave. We can always leave." "Stop saying that," he said. "Why didn't he just finish us off?" Ochek asked, more to himself than to anybody else, it seemed. It's a good question. Why didn't the wolf attack them? What's going on? Eric answered anyway. "You heard him. This is sport. He knows he can kill us whenever he wants." "No," Ochek said. "No, there's something else." "He can't have been scared of us," Eric said. "Maybe he feels guilty for what he's doing," Ochek said. "That wolf?" Eric said. "Did we just see the same wolf?" "Then how would you explain it?" "Me?" Eric shook her head. "I'm just happy to be alive." They packed up from lunch without talking about the wolf or the choice he'd given them, left the grove, and continued towards the peak. Now it refused to stay in the distance, forever out of reach, as it had seemed to be earlier in the day. Now it looked closer and closer by the second. Morgan couldn't help but wonder if they were climbing towards their death rather than Mizwa's salvation. And that is the end of chapter 17. Some big questions there. Why did the wolf let them go? We learned that the wolf is working for the human. And what his job is, again, this is some symbolism in this story about things that have happened to indigenous people. So the wolf says here, I stay in the green time and in turn keep the two-legged out. So he stays in the green time with this man, but even though this wolf can stand upright, he's down on all fours. And he keeps all the two-legged out. So the only animals that are allowed in that green time are the ones that either are on all fours or animals that have had to change who they are and stop walking upright and instead go down on all fours. When the animals go down on all fours, they become smaller than the human being. They just become smaller versions of themselves. We talked a bit about in this story about how the big or the powerful hurt the small. And when you make something big and powerful like an animal feel small, no matter how large that animal is, if it feels small, it will be controlled by something that feels like it has power over it. And that's what this human is doing to those animals. And that's a symbol, it symbolizes what happened to a lot of the indigenous people when they had to lose who they were to become more like the white men. Okay? They had to give up their beliefs, their practices, their culture, their traditions, and take on the traditions of other people. And that's a terrible thing. All right, guys, that's the end of chapter 17. That's the end of the expectations for this week. I will see you again next week for the rest of the story. Bye, guys. Loving this book.